Okay, everyone, I would like to officially welcome everyone to this afternoon's town hall. Welcome to our Unhoused Student Crisis virtual town hall. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'll go ahead and in a little bit talk about the organizations and folks that make today possible. But thank you first for being here. I'm going to go ahead and say that my name is Brenda Verano. I use she and her pronouns. And right now I am a reporter and community journalist with CALÓ News. Super quickly about CALÓ News. CALÓ News is a Latino publication covering LA County and a lot of Southern California. And right now we are covering heavily elections, as you all may know. But yeah, we are at CALONews.com, and I'm really excited and really happy to be here today, and especially talking about something so important like our unhoused student crisis. And as you all see in my background, housing is a human right. So when I was just asked to talk about this, I was very excited, and I know that the housing is something that we all care about and that we are all affected in one way or another. So thank you for having me. Welcome. Please make yourself comfortable this afternoon. We hope that we, one, talk about this crisis, but also help come up with clear solutions on how we can combat this, and as well as just get to know each other and get to know the folks that are like yourself looking for a better future when it comes to housing. Get to know a little bit of you all, but also introduce you to just the pillar who's been holding this event together, and that's the Association of Raza Educators. I know we have folks from the association here, so if you want to like put a little emoji just so we could see who's in the room. But the Association of Raza Educators was established to uphold the rights and liberties of the Raza community. We know that education is essential, right, when it comes to the preservation of civil and human rights as it is housing. And the association also provides the foundation for all political and economic progress. When it comes to like the city of LA, it's really important for which our Raza, to continue to help oppress folks by the educational system within the United States. Um, our Raza is they said that they're obligated to assure that educators serves as a tool for the liberation of our community. So that's a little bit about the folks that are hosting us today and who put this event together. And we'll be hearing from some of them later on today. So I'm really excited about that. Right now, what we're going to be doing before we get into our forum discussion is we are going to actually play a really quick video to just humanize and bring a little bit more perspective to the human crisis in LA and what it looks like outside of this forum, right? What it looks like in real life and real life experiences. So we're going to have a quick little video, and then we're going to come back and do our forum. So I'll go ahead and let that play.
Very hard. It's very hard to have to be a single mother and not have enough money to give them, So I always try to look for food banks, to get food for my kids.
How do you feel about that?
I feel sometimes depressed because it's hard, I'd rather give them food instead of me eating.
And that's the story of Nancy, who's a single mom. She has two kids, Cristina Fernandez. And we also have a story from Cristina. I don't know if we're going to be able to share that, but just want to amplify that Cristina is also a homeless mother of college-bound students. And again, when we talk about the housing crisis, it's not just of one person, right? It really impacts the whole family. And I'm gonna let this play as well.
Yo tengo 8 meses de ser homeless. Para mí y mi familia es muy difícil tener un lugar donde poder llegar. En este momento, a pesar que yo estoy trabajando más de 12 horas diarias, de lunes a viernes, también mi hija de 19 años Ella tiene un trabajo de 40 horas a la semana. No nos es fácil a completar una vivienda justa para nosotros. A mi hija, la de 19 años, le afectó cuando miró en la puerta todas las... Es algo fuerte porque pienso que ninguna madre quisiera vivir lo que yo viví, porque yo me esforcé muy grande para que mi hija fuera a la universidad, para que mi hija tuviera esa educación. Y esta persona puso todas las letras de la corte en mi puerta, y cuando mis hijas llegaron, mi hija se derrumbó porque dijo, mami, ¿cómo voy a ir a la universidad si no tenemos vivienda? Entonces por eso ella decidió irse a trabajar para ayudarme, pero a mí me gustaría que mi hija regresara a la universidad porque esa es la base. Ella tenía todo para hacerlo. Ella fue una niña, salió de aquí de la Dolores Mission con honores, y también salió de la Commonwealth Sacred Heart con honores, con todo pagado, pero ella tuvo que decidir mejor irse a trabajar, y eso para mí fue muy fuerte. Y también mi hija, la otra de 12 años, ahorita también fue algo muy fuerte para ellas. Estoy trabajando para mí, para mi familia, pero es difícil alcanzar el depósito de $10,000 para un...
Thank you for the playing of those videos. And again, these are just personal testimonies. Like there is a lot in our community of um elders in our families or parents that are dealing with homelessness, or they're seeing their kids deal with housing insecurity. And again, I'm gonna officially introduce our topic. Again, it's youth homelessness crisis in LA. We know that in LA County, we have a homeless crisis, but I think it's really specific and really important to talk about youth and about young adults experiencing this as well. Sometimes what we've seen, or what I've seen as a reporter, is there's a lot of statistics when it comes to homelessness, right? But there's often a lot of misconceptions and not enough data of where students are at when it comes to housing crisis. I'll talk a little bit more about myself because I think this is really, not that it's important, but I think in a way I also went to community college and I saw some of those just stigmas that there was when we talk about homelessness, right? I wasn't housing insecure myself. When I was in community college, I went to East LA Community College, but I met some folks that were. And one of the things that I remember was how it wasn't talked about, how it wasn't addressed, how it was more of like, because of the stigmas that come with being homelessness. Being homelessness just doesn't mean that you just don't have a place to live. It also means that you are maybe food insecure, that you don't know where you're going to shower. And that in itself is very hard to process. So with this conversation, we want to bring light to that issue, but also think about what are ways that we can individually or as a nation really come together to discuss homelessness openly and to provide resources so everybody could feel one, seen and supported. So I'll also share some important statistics. I'm sorry, I'm a journalist, but I think it's really important, again, to really bring some numbers into it. So these are statistics that I got from the Greater Los Angeles Youth Count of 2024. So these are really recent. And the youth count is done every year in LA to cover just demographics and housing status of soft populations within youth homelessness. So some of the things that the report says is that the total homeless youth population in 2024 was 3,227. That's only in the county of LA. 60% of those were sheltered, and then 40% of those are unsheltered youth. Folks that are still either couch surfing, that are still staying in people's couches, or that are still staying with neighbors or are staying in their cars. 18 to 24-year-olds make up 83% of homeless youth. That is a very big number. One thing also is that homelessness does disproportionately impact people of color. 42% of homeless youth are Black and African American, and then we have 41% Latino, Hispanic. So again, we know how disproportionately it affects. And these are just some numbers. Again, this is not to scare anyone, but this is really to amplify how big of a housing crisis we have. I'll be sharing some of these numbers after I can share them with our moderators, so they can also share that with you all. But again, just wanted to share some statistics and the importance of today and why we're here today. But with that, I also want to talk about a really important measure that can hopefully solve some of these housing crisis in LA, and we're going to be talking about Measure A. And feel free to stop me if I'm going a little bit too fast. And I'm sure that Measure A, you all might have known about it or have heard about it. And if you haven't, that's totally okay. That's why we're here today. But Measure A is one of the measures in this year's ballots. And that Measure A, it's called the official name, it's called the Homelessness Service and Affordable Housing Ordinance. And what that would do is, so right now, currently, for every, let's say, $20 that you spend on anything when it comes to groceries or thrifted clothes or anything that you need to pay taxes for, the county charges an extra 5 cents, right? And Measure A would boost that to 10 cents. And again, the taxing boost is to help homelessness. Some of this money or some of this sales tax would increase homelessness services indefinitely, and it would just funnel money into new efforts like developing affordable housing, providing rent relief, providing mental health just resources for homeless youth. These are some of the things. And what Measure A wants to do is just have a long-term funding source. So right now, there's no funding source that says, for homelessness, for a houseless crisis, this is the money that we have. There is no such thing right now. There's something called Measure H, which again is that temporary taxing that the county gets, those 5 cents that they take out from your groceries or whatever else you buy. But that's gonna end in 2027. So after 2027, if Measure A doesn't pass, we won't have any state funding or tax funding when it comes for homelessness and for the homeless crisis that we have. So that's a little bit about Measure A, and the only reason why I think we're called to share it is because, again, this could really be a revolutionary measure that, if passed, could securely secure some funding for the crisis that we have here in Los Angeles, and more than anything, provide those resources for the youth community and for families right now living in LA County. So yeah, that's a little bit about Measure A. Again, yes on A, it's gonna be on the ballot. And I incentivize everyone to just read a little bit more about it. But I wanted to really quickly introduce this before we get into our forum. Awesome. And feel free also to use the chat. I know that this is more, I don't want this to sound like a presentation or just me talking. So feel free to use the chat as you see fit. Right now, we are going to go into our forum, and we have a great list of speakers that we were able to put together for you all. And that really, I think, encompasses a lot of the different just places and people that are either impacted by this or that have resources or that have seen the homeless crisis kind of play out throughout LA County. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce some of those folks right now. And if if y'all are here, please, I mean, you are here, so please just put a little emoji on the chat or just on your screen so folks know who you are. We have Jayohn Carlton, and Jayohn is a first-year film student at California State University, Northridge. He's also a former student at the Roybal Film and Television Magnet. Right now, he's studying to work in post-production as a film editor within the film industry. And he has overcome a lot of family obstacles that have made him just housing insecure. So Jayohn is going to be talking to us about his personal testimony and share his story with us. So thank you, Jayohn. All of this, he fuels his activism and Student to Serve, BSU, Mecha, and as a volunteer in the Los Angeles LGBTQIA Center. So welcome. If you can add your little emoji so folks know where you're at. Thank you. And then we have Lupe Carrasco Cardona. So Lupe, if you want to put a little emoji by your profile or your image. And Lupe Carrasco Cardona is an award-winning ethnic studies educator for 25 years, who represented and presented the California Teacher Association, Cesar Chavez Si Se Puede Human Rights Awards in 2022. The National Educators Association Award also for teaching excellence in 2023. And she is a member of the California Teacher Association and Human Rights Cadre, and will be charged with providing training for teachers by teachers among social justice oriented educators in California. Lupe, as her bio says, is just a really great educator that's out here doing amazing things for teachers and for students. And she's a Chicana. She's a proud Chicana. Then we have Ndindi Kitonga, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Feel free to correct me when we go ahead and do our personal bios. But she is a PhD. She's a doctor. She's also an educator and a longtime organizer and an activist. She is proud member of the Association of Raza Educators as well. And she says that for her, the Association of Raza Educators is a liberatory education grassroots teacher organization in California. She's the co-founder of Los Angeles Workshop Schools, a radical secondary school in LA, that focuses on democratic learning and class consciousness. She also leads a mutual aid association in Palms area in Los Angeles, called PUMA. And then we have Daisy Lomelis, perdón, Daisy Lomelis. Daisy, if you can put a little emoji by your name. So Daisy, as a mother, teacher, and lifelong resident of Cudahy, daughter and a hardworking immigrants and planning commissioner, Daisy can attest to the power of education and the need for community. She is the first generation college graduate from the University of California, Riverside, with a sociology degree and a labor rights minor. She is serving as a math teacher and a teacher leader for the past 7 years. And she is right now serving as the City of Cudahy City Councilwoman, and she's also the former mayor. So Daisy, thank you so much for being here with us. We are very excited to talk to you today and to talk to all of our foreign speakers today. With that, it is my biggest pleasure to get our forum started, and I'm going to go ahead and do this by asking each and every one of our foreign speakers a question, and then we can pass it back to me, and then that's how we're going to be facilitating. So I'm going to have our first question for Daisy. Daisy, is that okay with you? Let me know if you're ready. And awesome. And Daisy, okay, cool. Daisy, as you're a city councilwoman and also a teacher. You helped pass rent control in the city of Cudahy. How does that help alleviate housing crisis in LA and LA County?
Hi, y'all. Such an honor to be here. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, as mentioned, I'm currently a council member, currently also up for re-election. So sorry if there's noise in the background. There's a lot going on here. But we really are trying to continue the work that we started, which really has been about serving, right, the most marginalized and uplifting all of the needs of our community. It's been an honor to serve our community for the past 4 years. We are 85% renters, and so without any protections, that really leaves 85% of our community vulnerable. And so last year, we were, super thankful to pass rent control and tenant protections. And so ultimately, that means that in our city, landlords cannot increase the rent more than 3% for once a year for our community. And so even during the campaign right now, right? Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Thank you. And so even up to yesterday, right, as we're campaigning, going door to door, I'm still hearing about landlords trying to take advantage of renters, trying to increase more than the 3% when they know. We heard a wild number yesterday about a landlord trying to increase the rent up to 14%. And so for me, last year when the topic came up, I really thought about my students that I've heard talk about, Miss Lomeli, I'm sorry, I'm, really tired, but my family last night, we were up late trying to think of where to move because we're getting evicted. And so for me, it was a no-brainer, right, to pass this ordinance and these tenant protections for our community, because when I come into the position of a council member, I bring the lens of a teacher, I bring the lens of a mother. And so I think of the students who, without this control or cap in the rent increase, would have to pick up another job, right? As you mentioned earlier, the students have to, and as the mother mentioned in the video, they have to leave their dreams behind because they now have to pick up another job and support and bring an income to their family. So for me, how could I not support rent control when we're over here trying to say, our kids deserve more opportunities, and our kids, we want to provide a college-going culture. How can we say that, but also not support their families in this very human right of housing, really? For me, it also means that if they're not able to come up with the 10% increase that before we pass rent control, if families cannot come up with that money, then that means they will be getting evicted. And as the mother also mentioned, they don't have the 5,000-10,000 for the down payment. And so it became very like just based on facts, right? And the fact that we are an 85% community, it became a strategy to prevent homelessness for our families. And again, 85% rent, 85% anything really deserves the attention and the support, right? For any other thing, we would have made it important. And so for this, even though we had a lot of people, obviously landlords who were against it, we had to focus on the fact that we are 85% renter. And it was a strategy to prevent homelessness. And I also thought about it in the sense of, right, preserving the mental health of our community, because it is stressful when you cannot pay rent. It is stressful to feel behind. So we also offer programs with rental assistance currently, in addition to our rent stabilization ordinance. But for me, the key word was really stability, right? Stability in mental health, stability in allowing our kids to pursue their dreams without having this financial burden as a family. And so I'll pause there, but that was a little bit about what led to us passing. And thankfully we had the votes for it. It wasn't unanimous, unfortunately, but hopefully when we win in a couple of days, then we'll be able to do more work to strengthen tenant protections in our city, because we'll hopefully have more support on the council that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. And again, congratulations on the rent stabilization. One thing to note is that not everyone in LA has that, or in LA County, we don't have a lot of places that have rent stabilization. And again, as you mentioned, it's great for folks' mental health to not have to worry about where they're going to be living, where they're going to be at in the next couple of months. But I think it also helps folks just be more secure in education, in their schools, in their jobs. When it comes to their money, a lot of Latinos, a lot of communities of color do not feel monetarily secure, right? Because of rent. I think that's one of the biggest things, how expensive rent could be. So muchas gracias. Thank you for sharing your testimony. We're gonna come back to you a little bit later, but we have another question for another speaker. And one thing that I wanted to just highlight is feel free to add some of these. If you all have a question that you all come up with, or as you are hearing our foreign speakers talk a little bit about their work and their experience, and a question comes in, feel free to pop it in the chat. And later on, we're going to go into our Q&A section. So these are not going to be forgotten. So feel free to add any if you have. We are going to go to our speaker, Lupe. And Lupe, I just wanted to ask you, we talked about Measure A and the possibility that it could be a permanent solution to our housing crisis, or that it could at least give us a bit more funding, right, to fund all these programs. How do you think Measure A can solve the homeless crisis, specifically here in LA? And where can students get some of this help? I know that R is also helping educators help students, right? That could be experiencing homelessness. So also, how can educators join R? Or is there anything that you want to say about that?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for those questions. So I just want to be very clear that the Association of Raza Educators does not think that Measure A is going to fully solve the unhoused student crisis or any crisis is really. I think there's a real issue with we have a capitalism crisis. I just want to put that out there from the front. But Measure A is definitely going to help ensure that we have some funding that will be able to get people off the streets. We know that Governor Newsom recently put into policy that everywhere in California, the local governments are going to be required to clean up encampments. And so then the question is where are these people going to go? Right. We know that, you know, a great majority of the people that are in these encampments are experiencing mental health issues. So Measure A is going to ensure that some funding is going to go into mental health services. There's going to be some funding for what they're doing in Cudahy, like ensuring that there's rent income, not rent income, but money for people to get housing assistance, rental assistance whenever they're falling behind. Measure A is going to allow that to have like that little fund there to protect people. Measure A is going to ensure that if there are programs that are working with unhoused populations that are not showing results, that the funding will be cut. So that's really good, because a lot of times you see these programs that are just getting funds, but we're not really seeing people, you know, getting humane housing, etc. So I think Measure A has some really good things in effect that's really going to help with that situation. Just as Daisy Lomeli mentioned earlier, you know, being an educator, we've heard tons of like horror stories. Like we have students who are most definitely living in cars. We have students who are living in tents, even though their parents are working. So there's this like stereotype that people who are living in these encampments are like just lazy or on drugs. Of course, you know, living in an encampment is so violent and so harsh that yes, it may lead to mental health illnesses that will lead to things like, you know, drug addictions, but that's not why they're there in the first place. Like they're working people. We know of students who were living in abandoned churches. We also know of students who are living in apartments or in houses where multiple families are living there. So you have whole families living in one bedroom, which puts the students, the youth, in really dangerous situations, because sometimes you're with strangers who may or may not be trustworthy. So we definitely have heard stories of really tragic situations where you know, wonderful families have put their children in really precarious situations. So we are, as the Association of Raza Educators, and a lot of our, you know, community folks are really in favor of Measure A, because at least there's going to be that little bit of funding that's going to be set aside to hopefully prevent this from happening. And definitely things like capping, you know, rent is really important, because as educators, we're also seeing a loss of students in our schools. They're going to places that are also being impacted by, increased housing costs, but not to the degree that LA is. And we love LA, and our students love LA. They want to be here. This is, many of them were raised here. They're multi-generations here, and it's just really sad to seeing them getting pushed out. But one thing also too, in addition to Measure A, that we're really trying to help students take advantage of, students like the children of Cristina Fernandez, is to know that if you're already enrolled at universities or community colleges, definitely all the ones in the LA area and across the state, there are basic need centers that exist that have food, that can do like help you with rent if you have a month that you're unable to, that can help you with paying your utilities, that can help you with your books. And oftentimes students don't know, or as you said earlier, like there's a stigma. But the reality is there's so many students going through it that I think it's probably like more of a rarity that you have students not going through this than it is like students going through this. So I think students should really, continue, even though it's difficult with their studies, that, your education is part of your liberation. We believe that as Raza educators. And so we want to help students be connected to those resources.
Thank you so much. And thank you for just amplifying that Measure A is not our one goal, right? It's not what's going to be saving us. I think it's really community and organizing efforts that are starting from folks like everyone else here, and the ongoing efforts that we're seeing in LA. But thank you for saying that Measure A could very much help. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And one thing that I also wanted to note is that, yes, we are having a lot of folks, students specifically, leave state schools. So LAUSD has had a very big drop in student enrollment for the last couple of years. And I think that's to say a lot of folks are leaving LA, and maybe that's what we hear sometimes. It's like, well, if rent's too expensive, then just go, right? Just live somewhere else. But it's like, no, these are our communities. We have built families here. We have built community here. We have all the right to stay where we are now. And ask for a better housing facilities, for better housing rights. And that needs to change, not us, right? So thank you, Lupe, for just reminding us of that. I'm gonna go into Ndindi, and I want to ask about mutual aid. I think we've talked about this in a way, very informally, here in this forum, when we talk about like how we support each other, what we need to be doing. But what is, Ndindi, what is mutual aid, and how can someone in need get help? Conservatively, how can someone help neighbors in need? We know about, state having a responsibility to help us, and the local government also having a responsibility to help us. But what does it look like when we help each other?
Greetings, everyone. Glad to be here. So I'll take about 3 minutes or so. In true teacher fashion, I do have a slideshow, but I made it into a PDF, and it's for everyone because it has a lot on it and I really can't cover it. But this is my passion. Like, I shamelessly inserted myself on this panel. That's the level of passion I have for this particular topic. And so mutual aid are all of the non-transactional ways that we can develop community care. We see a lot of mutual aid emerge out of COVID, as we realize that the systems around us are failing. They've always been failing vulnerable and marginalized people. And so it's everything from sharing food, exchanging resources, and what have you. But what I am really going to encourage everyone to understand mutual aid is as a way of being, and as a way of being that Black, Indigenous, brown folks, Native folks, marginalized people have managed to kind of be and address each other's needs. And so it really is a long-term commitment to our communities. It's the assumption that we have to have each other's backs. It's a way of also really addressing that question of what can we do even though we live under capitalism and colonialism to kind of take care of ourselves. And I'll stop being so abstract and vague. What kind of has emerged out of my understanding of mutual aid is a small mutual aid network called PUMA, because we were thinking Black Panther, so PUMA. But I'm here in the community of Palms. And the reason I actually want to share this story is because I want to encourage everyone that you can actually be involved, anyone with and all sorts of skills and talents and abilities that you have, you can participate in things like this where you get to know your neighbors better and actually support them in real material ways. And so what PUMA is an abolitionist network of care. I kind of founded it and during COVID, and we just kind of started, doing what you normally do, set up a table, have some outreach, see who didn't get information about COVID, food, clothes. It was a lot of that. And then it's kind of slowly grew outside of like myself and one or two other people. And now there's about 40 core organizers. If I add all the volunteers, there's like 100. And we're supporting and working with and know probably over 1,000 unhoused people in my general community. And that just happened in a couple of years. So I do want to encourage everyone that that's a real possibility. Some of the activities that we are involved in that make us outside of a nonprofit and outside of what the state and city does is we very much push back on what Lupe talked about, which is the nonprofit industrial complex, where sometimes you do have organization, companies, what have you, that can get government contracts, but they don't necessarily address issues completely. So we kind of do your standard outreach, give out food, what have you. We do that 4 times a week. We also have a harm reduction program now, so supporting people who do use drugs, trying to connect them to services. If you've ever applied for anything in this city, it's pretty convoluted and challenging. Imagine trying to hunt down a service when you don't have a phone, you don't have electricity, you don't have running water, or any of those types of things. We do court support, so we go to court with people. For us, part of abolition is to try and solve issues and understand them as being social issues, public health issues, and not issues to criminalize. So we're against criminalization of poverty. And that also means going to court with people because they just keep getting tickets for being poor, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We watch cops a lot who do the criminalization. We go to a lot of sweeps and we monitor them and we push back. We advocate for services. We advocate for permanent housing. We also think joy is important to embrace. So we do a lot of local like hangouts and art centers. And if someone passes away in the community, sometimes this is not obvious to everyone, but you might not be able to afford a funeral or a place you can gather. So we try and like put together spaces where that's possible to support people with that. And then kind of finally, the way we understand ourselves is if you're not in control of your own housing, you are a tenant. And it means a bunch of people are precarious. So it's not just the person who's unsheltered in a tent. It's the rent burdened people. Like if you're paying more than 30% of your rent, it's everyone who's precarious. And it's this idea of all of us in our precarity should take care of each other and push back against things that we don't want and then fight for things that we do want, which is always not just a shelter or a room, but actual permanent housing and services, because as we've all kind of agreed that it is a human right. I'll be quiet. On here at the end, I guess the best thing I can say to get involved is get to know your neighbors, get to know them well, reach out. So mutual aid is not about individualism. And let's see, what's another one that I think might be helpful? I'll also remember people who are unhoused and people who are facing precarity are the experts of their situation. And so really our role is to be supportive and not be prescriptive. So I'll stop there, but thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about mutual aid. A lot, actually. I think I never really heard. I mean, I've heard, what mutual aid is. I think it's a phrase that is often used and kind of passed around. But thank you for giving us really clear examples of what it looks like. And I love of like getting to know our neighbors. I think living again in a really capitalistic society, it's very, very us, very our family, very just individualistic. And I myself don't know my neighbors or their struggles. And I think mutual aid really is like a practice that we're trying to enforce to live and imagine the world we're trying to live in. So thank you for that. And right now we're going to go into one of the questions that I have. And our speaker, really, I just want to thank for being here, Jayohn. And thank you for one. I think you're going to be sharing a little bit about your story. But really, this is a student and a youth testimony that this is why we're here today. So please help me in the chat, hype up Jayohn, and yeah, thank you for being here. And my question for you is, just how has housing insecurity impacted you and other students that you may know, both when you were in high school and now that I know that you're in a university student? Please feel free to share whatever you feel called for. But again, I think this testimony really is important to solidify the statistics and everything else that we talked about. This is real life, and I just want to again congratulate you for sharing that with us. So I'll pass it to you, and thank you again for being here.
Of course. Can you guys, everybody hear me correctly? Everybody good? Okay, good. I'm on a phone, so you're on T-Mobile. Okay, so hi again. My name is Jayohn. I currently attend Cal State University Northridge. I do film. I'm a cinematographer. I produce music. I'm learning how to produce music, and I'm just an advocate all around. I'm never gonna not be that, no matter what I do or what God calls me to do. I'm gonna always be that. So, before any of those things, I'm a student first, and my mom has always put that in me to always make sure that my academics are good because of the fact that we grew up housing insecure and food scarce, all that. We grew up with that for so many years. So, yeah, I think a lot of the things that you guys talked about were very important. Like me just sitting here, I learned so much. And I do want to just emphasize that a lot of those statistics that you brought up are just what is reported. There are so many people who cannot talk about that. To give context to my experience, I was homeless from 4th grade all the way up until 6th grade. And I had went to, I think, 3 or 4 different elementary schools, just moving around different parts of LA. And so the last thing I knew I could do was tell anybody that I was homeless. So like if I came to school in the same outfit, or if I was grabbing a few extra lunches, whatever the case may be, I could never tell anybody why. And my mom always told me it wasn't because you don't have a voice or because, what you have to say is not important, but that I could be potentially taken away from her for being a victim of the way that society has set us up to be from the start. So I think that's really important to say. Like, it's very hard for a lot of students know what's going on. Like my mom, she hid things from me as much as she could, but I knew what was going on. And I knew I couldn't say anything. So the way that society has it set up is that they set us up to be oppressed, and then they punish us for being oppressed, and then they teach us how to be quiet and oppressed. That's why earlier you said be quiet. I said never be quiet. Like, do not be quiet. It's about knowing when to say things and how to say things, because I knew that I could say stuff. It just was how I said it to who I said it to, and I had to make sure that everything was correct. Like a lot of my teachers, my past teachers at Weyball, we have great connections. We always talked about what was important, and I knew that some of those conversations couldn't be talked about outside of the classrooms that we were in. It was a lot of safe spaces. So just to talk about my testimony again, I was a student, and I never remember being able to just be a student. Like I always had to worry about my mom. It was just me and my mom. That's it. Me and my mom in our car for 2 years. And a lot of our family let us, sleep over some nights. My mom was she always loved having her own stuff. So she never wanted to impose on anybody. She always made us wash the dishes and be up and out early. We sat at parks. We did everything other than be there. And we just slept a lot of places. So I learned how to just be very courteous, clean up after myself, but I could never go to school and not have stuff circulating in my brain. So I think back to me being a younger student, and I think like I did that. Like I really did. Like my grades I passed all my classes. I was still bubbly. I was still happy. I never let it take away my spirit, but I was always taught to advocate for myself no matter what. But again, I was also taught how to do that and when not to do that. So I think that's very important. But I remember being a student and I slept outside of school one time. A big mistake. We was probably going through something. I don't know what we was going through, but I had to sleep outside of school. And so we had a lot of our clothes in the back of the car. And so when school let out, my mom had picked me up and all the students had seen like our car full with clothes. And they were like, well, why do you have all those clothes? And then two kids who will not be named, they went around telling everybody that I was homeless. And it was like, you know, I tried to play it off like, oh, I'm not homeless. We just have a bunch of clothes. But that was really my home that they were looking at and making jokes about. So then I stuck it out. I graduated. I still graduated from that class and I was still homeless even after that. Like I went to graduation, I looked very nice, like, and I was still homeless even then. But the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that we have never had the luxury as oppressed people and marginalized people to just be students or to just follow our dreams or chase our dreams. There's always been other things that have made it harder for us or stopped us. So the biggest thing for me that I've learned is that knowledge is really power. I used to think like, what are y'all talking about? Like the pen is mightier than the sword. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? But it's very true because now these people will pay you so much money just to be intelligent and just to go out into these institutions and say, I made it out of what you guys put me in. You guys put me here and I made it out and now you want to pay me. So it's like, that's the biggest thing I want to tell students or even other people. Knowledge is power. It really is. And go to school. You can make school your home. I didn't dorm, but I could have dormed. Like all the money that I received, I could have dormed. I could have made that my home. But just knowledge is power and be very, very intentional on your advocacy, but always advocate for yourself and for other people. There's so many kids who they find so many reasons to be so separate from each other. Even people who are in my community is so different. But as soon as somebody brings up the topic of homelessness or abuse, even in various topics, everybody kind of side-eye each other like this because we all go through it, but we all try to make ourselves seem different, but we're all very one and the same. And so that's my little testimony. I'm happy to answer any more questions, but yeah, y'all stay powerful. That ain't nothing. I'm sitting here right now. So we here. Thank you.
Love that. Stay powerful. Thank you for ending us with that. And Jayohn, thank you for just sharing your testimony today. Again, I think a lot of us work with students or are around students, or are students themselves. So I think your testimony really is so vital to the conversation that we're having today. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. One thing that I saw in the chat is Guadalupe really helped us kind of bring together what we learned about today. And one thing I'm just going to read those out loud and some takeaways. I think promote and support the passage of Measure A. We talked about this is not our goal, our full goal, and this is not going to be the solution to all of our problems, but it will help provide some dedicated funding to the homeless crisis that we're seeing. Connect unhoused students and families to resources. If you are someone that is working with youth, that's working with families, that's what mutual aid is, right? Like connecting folks where they need to be connected, and get to know your neighbors and participate in mutual aid efforts in your local community to support those facing housing insecurity. Thank you again, Ndindi, for just sharing that as well and being able to kind of bring us together. If our local government, is not able to do that for us, how do we step in for our neighbors? And then continue to advocate and amplify the experiences of unhoused students and youth. Jayohn, your testimony was just one of those, but I think when we talk about this stigma, when it comes to talking about being homeless, there is, but your testimony and every other student's testimony is so vital to bringing this issue and making sure that, one, we get passage of measures and ballot measures and policies, but it's also important to let folks know that they're not alone, right? And that there's community willing to back them up. That's some of the big points that I think we took away from this conversation, but I'm sure you all individually took a lot. I did myself as well. And we're going to be opening it up in case there's any question that we might have. I know we are in the last 5 minutes of our time together, but if there's any question that anybody might have that's like, I want to ask this and this is important to me, this will be the time. So feel free to, yeah, to put that in the chat. I know we said, oh, well, we have a question here actually for Jayohn. What advice will you give to other students to keep hope alive when they are homeless?
Okay, that's a great question. So what I would say to those students, because I was once that student, is that it always gets better. Like, there's nothing that you can do that will benefit you more than to keep going. Like, there's never a situation that you can't make it out of, even when it feels like it or even when it looks like it. Like, there's been plenty of situations where people will come at you, or people will even more than one person or more than one thing will come at you at once. But as long as you keep that pen in your hand and keep your community around you, that's a big thing. Make sure you have community. There's community for all of us, no matter how specific we are as humans. There's always someone to the left to you or to the right of you that will have your back. And you just have to find your community, but just keep going. Like, stand on your 2 feet and push forward, no matter how hard it gets. And you're gonna find yourself in a better place that makes you appreciate what you're going through right now. So yeah, because I appreciate all of my struggle that I've been through, and I'm still going.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have another question from Kelly, and then I see Adrian Alvarez here with his hand up, but we're gonna go into Kelly Flores' question. And one thing that it says, what resources do we have in LAUSD to support students and families experiencing homelessness? Any of our educators or anybody else that would want to answer that, and really, really briefly too, if you all may.
Yeah, I'll be super brief. There is a department that deals with unhoused students in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And so I would say definitely reach out to that department. There should also be a liaison at each of our school sites that that works with those students. But as Jan said before, a lot of times students aren't self-identifying as unhoused because of the fear of being caught in the system. So yeah, so I would say like we should probably do a little better connection between that department and what's actually happening on the ground on our school sites.
Thank you. And I know Ndindi, you put in a link there as well. So really appreciative of that. One question, I think we have Adrian Alvarez. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if there's any component to the measure that would secure that the largest portion of the funds go to actual help for the houseless, because there is this problem with the nonprofit industrial complex. There's a humongous bureaucracy that ends up eating up a big chunk of the resources, and there are people that, you know.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Part of what was written into the Measure A was that there's going to be transparency and an expectation of results. So any underperforming programs will lose their funding. There's going to be a significant increase in accountability to deliver the results and investments in the data to ensure that that is happening. And then Measure A is also going to require public input and annual audits. So in terms of, which programs get which percentage, I don't have that offhand, but I know that that has been determined. But I think the significant part of Measure A is that they are acknowledging that that funds in the past have been mishandled, and if it passes, that there are mechanisms to ensure that it does actually go to ensuring that that people get the humane housing. And I think the fact that LA County has been kind of pushed to like the mandate to ensure that this happens because of Governor Newsom's legislation around no more encampments, I think is going to really ensure that if Measure 8 passes, that that it's actually going to what it's supposed to be going to. And then of course there's us, right? Like we're the ones that are going to have to ensure that that there's no mishandling of the funds, that our students will not have to experience what our amazing and awesome Jayohn Carlton here had to experience between 4th and 6th grade.
Thank you. Thank you, Lupe. And thank you, Adrian, for that question. I think those are the type of questions, right, that we should be asking when the measure comes in. It's like, okay, we have the money, but where are these, where's the funding going to be, and who is looking after that? And so, yeah, those are the right questions that we are supposed to, be having in the next couple of months if Measure A does pass. One thing that I wanted to mention is that I think we all are we all just know a lot and have a lot of knowledge, and I encourage everyone here to put your Instagram handles or your websites, whatever resources that you feel could help everyone in this forum today. I feel that we are here joining. There's a reason why we all chose to be here this afternoon, and we could have been doing so many other things, but we're here today. And yeah, I just wanted to advocate that of like, feel free to connect with one another even after this forum, right? I think it's really important, again, with the conversation of mutual aid. I'm gonna go ahead and just thank all of our speakers, thank all of our foreign speakers. If you all can help me give everybody a round hand of applause and just some emojis, some whatever that looks like to you. But I just want to say thank you for everyone's testimony and their knowledge and their presence. I'm so glad and so honored to be able to moderate such a really impactful forum, and I hope that this is not the first and last time. Again, this was a town hall presentation of the Association of Raza Educators in partnership with CALÓ News and LAVA. So thank you all again for joining us. We will be having this pre-recorded, I believe, and could be sharing it to our audiences out there. Awesome. Yeah. So this is so we'll be here for a little bit more, but thank you all for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you all virtually. And again, let's keep these conversations going. I think this was one of the many forums and many conversations that we hope stem from this. Thank you all. Bye, everyone. Have a safe weekend.